Hi, Todd Cooper here in San Diego, America's finest city. I have the privilege today to bring you an update on the joint IHE-HL7 Gemini Medical Device Interoperability SDPi+FHIR project. We'll talk about those acronyms in a minute. This was originally presented as part of the Devices Working Group meetings on May 26th. This is a joint meeting with IEEE, HL7, and IHE device standards community. And it's an update from the presentation we gave last January. So with no further ado, here are some of the topics I'll cover. What's happened since last January? Quite a bit. It's always great to go through this to get an idea of the fact that we've actually are making a lot of progress. And then I'll show you a number of the Confluence pages that we have updated, and possibly later on we'll actually get tours of each individual place. But all of our work is focused on the Confluence site, and I think you'll enjoy seeing all of that. And then what is remaining for the rest of the year and beyond. So we'll talk about that. First off, year 3 progress. We actually began this back in about this time in 2019. So this is starting our year 3. What has happened though since January to May? First off, in the presentation last January, we gave an update for what happened in year 1 and year 2. Go back to that because it is a very encouraging to see all of the progress that was made even during 2020 and all the COVID challenges that we had. So there are a couple of URLs at the bottom of this that you'll be able to go to. And this presentation, the PDF, will also be available there as well. So first off, let's look at 2 of the slides that we did in January, the topics, and we'll talk about where did we get in trying to do move forward on those in the last few months. First was publishing the SDPi supplement in the June 2021 timeframe. Well, June is only a few weeks away. So I'm glad to say though, we're still looking at sometime late Q2, sometime in Q3 of this year. So in the next 4 months or so, we should be able to attain that. But we've really been focused these last few months on publishing the 1.0 version of this supplement using updated IHE tooling. And a stretch goal is to actually get the 2021 IHE technical framework published using that same capability. We've also looked at conducting HL7 IHE plugathons and connectathons. I'll give you an update on that. But basically we had an IHE plugathon in Germany in March, and we have another one planned for next week, the first week of June, June 1st and 2nd. We participated in the January FHIR Connectathon, and we did so last week in the May FHIR Connectathon, and we're planning on doing so again in this September. And we focus on 2 key use cases. One is silent point of care, or silent ICU bed, and another is isolation point of care, which obviously has very strong resonance with the challenges that we face globally today with COVID. And then also we got approved last year a Madeira profile supplement development. So how have we made progress on that as well? And our goal, I don't know that we're going to make it now, is to get at least 80% of a draft done by the end of June, but we'll still be moving that forward. So we were working on those. But the real focus was on tooling and some of these emergent ideas. The other is getting a better handle on how we manage requirements across all the different specifications that are combined into this SDPi+FHIR specification. So we did that. We launched a pilot project around that. We looked a lot at tooling, especially the tooling that we want to do for publication as well as for testing. Education, we realized that there is a lot of information here. How can we systematically go through and chunk it into bits like this presentation for people to watch for 5-10 minutes, 15 minutes at the max, and come up to speed on what we're talking about when we talk about things like SES MDI or SDC, SDPi+FHIR, just in case you're not familiar with those, safe, effective, and secure, SES, quality focused, regulatory focused. Medical device interoperability, more technology focused. SDC is service-oriented device connectivity standards, plug and trust standards that have their home in IEEE, in ISO, and that we profile in IHE with a set of profiles we call SDPi. SD, service-oriented device point of care interoperability. Of course, SD is for San Diego, America's finest city. And Pi is just kind of geeky cool. And the integration of that with FHIR. So that's really the core focus of this whole project. And then building community. How can we get better at doing that? So again, we have a bunch of Confluence pages. I'll get into the details of this. And actually, let's go back. I should stay back. So you'll see all of that. The main message here is that we've made a lot of progress on each one of these, some more than others, but it's been in a few short months, we've done a good job at that. Three of the topics that we looked at in January was the fact that we have many different ways to get to a FHIR representation of device-sourced information. We have the implementation guides, the devices on FHIR implementation guides. We have IHE profiles for that. We also have the V2 to FHIR project within HL7 that profiles the same messages that we use for device integration. Do all of those different approaches end up at the same place? That's an area that we're watching. We think it kind of does, and we are kind of monitoring, and we have to keep doing that. So that's one of the background tasks that we're looking at. Also, we talked about how to accelerate the evolution of how IHE technical framework publications are developed, are published, are managed, and actually moving something closer to what you see in FHIR for HTML, only more. Can we get away from this monolithic PDF-based specification document? And related to that is how do we go and achieve interoperability between the requirements of different standards? I just mentioned some standards from ISO and IEEE, all of which we test in one interface, but those requirements need to be traceable back to the source or sources of why we put that capability in the interface. And we need to get coverage. So how do we achieve that type of conformity assessment? We've actually evolved that into something that I've baked into two or three short acronyms. One is requirements interoperability, focus on technical framework, evolution, how we do that specification, and conformity assessment, where the test report is regulatory submission ready. I'll talk a little bit about that, but this is the really key focus of how we go about doing the specifications in this SDPi+FHIR project, this joint HL7 IHE Gemini project, and then into which we're going to put all the specifications. We've made great progress. So let's look, as I said, at some of the Confluence pages. Don't get worried. I'm not going to take you on detailed tours of each, but I'm going to show you the ones, show you the URLs, and then maybe later we can look at some of these. Again, they're all under construction. So when you go to them, keep that in mind. First off, wow, this is new stuff since January. So obviously we've been keeping pretty busy, and they're all works in progress, which means, yeah, there's some messy loose ends, but also you can contribute easily. And we ask you and welcome you to do that. As you see on the left also, any of these Confluence pages, you're able to watch. There's a little box in the top right of the menu that says, watch this page. When it gets updated, you get an email. So do that. We'd love to have you do that. Here are just some of the areas. The first one is on the requirements interoperability, technical framework, conformity assessment, focus. How do we work these all together into a new approach for how we develop, manage, and publish our standards? Here's a section that I started to expand out on that explains what that focus is. Then we have 3 pilot projects we've kicked off. By pilot project, I mean it's a short-term project. The intent is to be either all paper or kind of do get the tools placed together to be able to show feasibility. can we actually do this? And is it useful to move forward in a given area? One of those is using model-based systems engineering, MBSE, the OMG systems modeling language, SysML, and the tool from Magic Draw Cameo for systems modeling that uses both MBSE and SysML. Can we take that and come up with a single source of truth specification, model-based, for what we're developing, moving from a document-centric, document-based approach to a model-centric, where you have a single source of truth in the model, and then you have different views that we can publish out of for each stakeholder and what they're actually looking at. We're very positive about this, especially for the medtech community. And we have some other presentations on that. This is the homepage for that discussion. Also, I told you that for IHE conformity assessment, we are, that was helped or defined, driven by the expertise out of NIST. And NIST has also been very active in helping the FDA in the accreditation scheme for conformity assessment, where they take accredited standards and say, how would we be able to perform or recognize conformity assessment reports for conformance to a given standard in a regulatory submission. So as I said, that's exactly what we're talking about doing with our profiles in the IHE conformity assessment program, which is now very closely aligned with what the FDA in their pilot project have done. And so this one is saying, okay, we know it's too late to put new standards in, but could we do that? Could we use the provisions in the approach for the FDA ASCA project, pilot project, to be able to achieve that in the IHE conformity assessment of the SDPi+FHIR profiles? I'm very positive about that. This is the home for that. And then finally, the requirements interoperability pilot. Basically taking a stack of those standards that are related to the SDPi profiles, and those include the 11073 SDC standards. They include the participant key purpose standards, which are part of that. They include standards from ISO, IEC, from IETF, from OMG, all of these. Let's take a selection of these and say, can we take the requirements from those, relate those to the actual capabilities that are being tested in an interface and get traceability, so that we can say, yes, we are conformant to this core standard based on a finite set of test cases that we're running. Also running the requirements back to the use cases that drove the capabilities that we have. This is a short pilot. It's doing very well, and I'm very excited about doing this. And obviously, these are all tied together, these three pilots, because in the SysML, you actually do requirements modeling that also kicks out an OMG RecIEF, requirements interchange format specification. So we learn a lot with the requirements interoperability pilot in terms of what kind of information, but we might also be able to formalize that in the SysML Cameo part of this and be able to actually come up with a model that supports requirements interoperability between multiple standards and specifications out of the box, a single source of truth. How hard can that be? Just very quickly, we have the topics of interest page. These are key topics that we keep adding to that and discussing those. Two topics very recently have to do with precision time protocol synchronization when NTP is not enough. PTP, it's an emerging IEEE standard. And we think it might have a lot of help for some very tight coupling between systems around a point of care that need to be closely time synchronized. Also, we added one on various alert conditions. When you get into alert delegation and smart alerting systems, into the weeds of how to implement that, there's some issues that we have to figure out how we're going to do that. We have all of those on the topics of interest page. That's where we home those discussions, come up with the strategy, the solution we're going to advance, and then migrate that into the specifications, the SDPi+FHIR specifications. Finally, we have events. There's a home page for the events That includes the plug-a-thons I mentioned, that includes the FHIR connect-a-thons I mentioned, includes the meeting that we made this presentation at, all events we have on there. The upcoming plug-a-thon number 3 next week is on there. And we're also looking forward to the FHIR connect-a-thon in September and the working group meetings then. We haven't put it on this page yet, but the plan is also to be able to do a virtual IHE Connect-a-thon around SDPi, possibly the 3rd quarter of this year. A lot has to happen, but we think it's possible. And then do some presentations or some Connect-a-thons early next year, and maybe even a showcase at the HIMSS conference in 22. Stretch goals, I know, but all that information will be on here. We have, as I show, not only the plug-a-thon events, there's the URL for that Confluence page, but also the FHIR Connect-a-thons. On this use case narrative page, you'll see a section for the FHIR Connect-a-thons. All the discussion detail is there as well. That's focusing again on an isolation point of care, which really says, okay, so now I've separated the actual monitoring and hopefully control of the devices around a point of care. How can we utilize that to reduce the number of times caregivers have to put on PPE to enter that, to do straightforward, simple, easily done care chores, like maybe titrating an infusion pump or changing an alert limit on a given monitored value, like a respiration rate on a patient. So that's what that's focused on. We also added, by the way, last week, isolation point of care at home, where we looked at hospital at home, a huge effort that's now launched because of last year's COVID challenges, as well as virtual care platforms, medical care, medical grade platforms that support individuals in their homes, in their communities. So that's the isolation point of care, is taking it not only from an ICU point of care, but ICU at home as an isolation point of care. We continue to advance the Madeira profile. That's for the Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Lab Medical Device Interoperability Reference Architecture. You can go see the work that we're formalizing on that page. And they also just released a new video of the reference implementation that they're just completing, that is based on the SDC standards, IEEE 11073 standards. So check that out as well. And then the last part that I'm really excited about is finally getting a place to have a curated set of videos like this one, where we can start to build it out and provide short explanations on all sorts of different topics. We're just getting that going. So again, it's kind of messy, but it has great potential. So what does the rest of this year look like? First off, we are actively working on updating a 3 to 5 year strategic plan. We have a page that we crafted the end of last year, December and January. We will update it on that page. And it's not looking at just through the end of 21, but also 22, 23, where do we want to be? SDPi+FHIR is a huge space. We've done a lot of work, but I think we can put it together to be able to have a really good, clear picture for you to see where we're headed. Those work streams and objectives that we identified in that January 21 update that I covered just a few minutes ago are the same. So that same point, although we've refined it with the RITFCA focus project, for example. So we'll update those. The dates will probably change as more sane minds look at this and say, Todd, you're crazy. We can't do all that in this time frame. But it's not like you're going to see a massive change. Here are some of those goals, okay? Just so you remember, get reminded. And again, join this community. On this Confluence page here, the community Confluence page, we show you listservs that you can join, Zulip channel chats that you can join. Just drop us a line and let us know. It's easy to do, to participate in all this, to get a Confluence account, a Zulip account. No charge, you just have to show up. And then to be able to be part of monitoring what's discussed, but even better yet, joining in that discussion, even asking questions and getting pretty speedy replies. So that's the update from this side towards the end of May. Again, you can watch all this project discussion on this Confluence page you see on the left there. And we look forward to seeing you and hearing from you in the near future. Thank you.